I am so excited for this, Ceci. Thanks for agreeing to do this with me.
Mm.
So I'm just gonna ask you some questions, and the first one is just give me a quick introduction of who you are and what you do.
All right. Well, my name is Ceci Zeichner. I own Pochoir NYC, which will eventually become a company dedicated to hand embroidered fashion for professional women, made by working women in New York City. So right now, I'm working with Heather on branding and eventually product development for our initial hero product, which will be DIY embroidery kits.
Awesome. So tell me, where were you at before we started working together? Where were you at in your business before we kind of jumped in together?
Right. So I was taking classes at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City in sustainable fashion design and entrepreneurship. So part of the program is to basically you build your company as you go along in each class. And that wasn't something I'd even intended on doing. I just wanted to take the sustainable design classes to have it on my resume. But then I got the idea from another person in the program to start an embroidery business, which was a hobby that I'd started before the pandemic, but then I really picked up in earnest in the spring of 2020. So I thought, wait, like this person's stuff is nice, but I could definitely do better. So I started an Etsy shop selling embroidery patterns and like finished embroidery hoops. So something like this, but finished. And it was just taking up so much of my time to make a single hoop. And I really wasn't getting any sales. Like I got maybe a sale a month. But then you, Heather, messaged me on LinkedIn, and you said that you were a coach who helps creatives. I'm like, oh, well, I am a creative and I need help because I have no sales. And I was really excited when I think one of the like kind of free advice tidbits that was very valuable, as you know, anyone watching this, Heather has many valuable advice tidbits. But one of the tidbits you gave was think about something that you'd really love to design. And I thought I love designing tailored workwear, suits, skirts, dresses, but I definitely don't have the money to start a fashion line right now. But I could embroider secondhand and upcycled clothing, and that'd be very sustainable. So I got very excited. And I was able to work with Heather to, develop my brand and my voice because that's what I really needed. I didn't really have the foundations for what is needed to start a business as opposed to having a hobby.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious because I know that we spoke twice in the beginning, and I just gave you some advice, and that's when you started to do the secondhand and upcycled embroidery pieces, and you reached back out to me. It was like I feel like 6 to 8 months later, at least, right? And then
yeah, because I wanted to give myself time to just to design and then to embroider everything. It took much longer than I thought it would. Yeah.
So
and then your advice to me at that point, I think, was to figure out how to outsource the embroidery. That's when I realized Heather has a lot of good ideas. I should work with her. And that's not when I realized it. I wanted to work with you after the first meeting, but it just wasn't feasible.
Yeah.
At that point. Awesome. And there also like wasn't any products. So,
So this next, okay, so wait, I'm jumping ahead of myself because I have so many
that's fine.
Things I want to ask. So this next step, I'm just going to jump forward anyways. This next step of your business is launching your actual product, right? And, kind of pulling from the strategy to like implementing the website and pushing your products out there. Tell me what you're feeling as I say that to you.
So I'm really excited because as I've said to you many times in our meetings, you're basically like a business therapist. So able to to bounce off ideas with you and see what works, see what might be a good idea. So with embroidery kits, I am really excited because, again, thinking about outsourcing the work, instead of me sitting down and like embroidering a jacket and it takes a month, like basically I'm making the customer do the work for me. And then that will eventually fund my ability to pay other people to embroider pieces of clothing that I already have that I want to design with.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have necessarily gotten to that place without your encouragement.
Tell me what your vision is then for these kits and these pieces. I would love to hear what you
Sure. So part of the visual identity that we've worked on together is a company that's very, very elegant, little vintage inspired. So I want to make sure that these kits have premium products. So for example, I want to use birchwood embroidery hoops in these kits instead of bamboo, which are more fragile and splintery. And yeah, birch hoops are just much better quality. And I wanted like make little bundles wrapped with like vintage ribbon that I'm sourcing right now. And then my hope is that when the customer opens it, they feel like they've gotten this really beautiful, elegant, high quality surprise in the mail, either a gift to themselves or to a friend who wants to learn how to embroider. And I want to make sure that each kit teaches someone something new about embroidery. So maybe it is needle painting, which is basically shading designs with different colors of thread in a certain way, or maybe teaching them a new stitch that isn't all that common in contemporary embroidery. Because I feel like right now, a lot of embroidery kits are sort of like that rifle paper company aesthetic, which there's nothing wrong with. It's beautiful. I love it. I'm a millennial. It's catnip for me. But you also want to differentiate yourself. So my hope is that these kits are something beautiful to touch, beautiful to look at. And the final product is beautiful, but it's also educational and wants you to keep learning more. And just uncommon things that aren't really being taught right now in contemporary embroidery.
What do you feel like your biggest differentiators that we uncovered during our strategy session?
So I think our differentiator was, I think part of it was the customer that we're reaching out to. So it isn't just a broad group of crafters who like cute things. It's professional women who don't, they have a job, they might even have a child, or two. So they don't really have a lot of time to themselves. So this embroidery is a way for them to be sustainable and invest in ethical fashion without, while also having some time to meditate, take a little time for themselves. And so I think being able to identify that customer is really important, because then that changes the marketing and the message of these kits. Because an embroidery kit, at the end of the day, it's thread and a design and an embroidery hoop and maybe some supplies. So you have to really tell the story, and the story is definitely the differentiator. I also think the aesthetic that we worked out, where I'll be combining a couple of different styles of embroidery from around the world. I think that will also be a visual differentiator for sure.
I mean, I think we also talked about creating possibly, this is like step, we're kind of thinking about this stuff, but like creating like certain kinds of mending and embroidery styles for like different parts. And
yes,
I think that's one thing that I know in comparative research that was not.
And I definitely need to do more research about mending. So like my vision for the kits right now is to like basically like you have a blank top and you want to jazz it up, so then you embroider it. But in terms of mending, I definitely need to do more reading and research about that. Eventually I'd like to embroider kits that come in different types of thread. So it's the same design, the same colors, but different types of thread, because some thread, embroidery floss, which is kind of the most common thread that's used in embroidery, it's meant to break apart. Like you can unwind the string and have a bunch of little very thin threads, but that's not great for clothing because something could snag, or if it's a sweater, the sweater stretches and then the thread will just kind of pull apart. So yeah, definitely like probably stage 2 of product development, like get the first launch and then start thinking about different colors, different types of thread to use.
Awesome. I didn't know that you see, that's cool. I didn't know that you were thinking that. So okay, so how have you enjoyed your experience with learning and working with me so far?
It's been great. I mean, you're so encouraging. You're like I said, business therapist. I really enjoyed the modules and exercises that we did together. It was also nice having kind of like a homework assignment every week to really get me to think about the company. And of course, your method starts with not even thinking about a business, but just thinking about personal goals and clearing your headspace and thinking about I believe you call them like self-limiting beliefs. So thinking about those and kind of like doing a little therapy for yourself, write it down in a diary or something, but having these prompts to really reflect and just get yourself into the right mind space of, here are the things that I'm afraid of. What's the worst that can happen if I fail? Actually, wouldn't be that bad. So why not go ahead and do it? And, conquering some of those inner demons. It definitely prepares you for moments as you develop your business further where you'll have some doubt or, like a lack of self-confidence, which I think is normal. I mean, one of the last times we talked, I'd basically been experiencing a month of just like downtime and just exhaustion, and like my creative focus was kind of elsewhere. And I kind of think part of it was because I lost the structure of the classes, but you also need to be able to motivate yourself. So because I'm not going to have you every week to chat, unfortunately, but you have a life. So, and you have other customers. So we can't like hang out every week all week.
Well, like honestly though, I think being kind of held accountable sounds like was kind of really valuable for you to like.
And then I think being able to start the maker school course, like that's another level of accountability. So that's good too.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So what's the biggest aha moment you've had with working with me?
I would say definitely again, like the first was when you suggested that I like think about what kind for the viewer, I have a fashion design background. So when we met, you suggested working on something that I love designing or embroidering something that I usually love designing. Like that was a big aha moment. But then I would say the second one is the part of the like vision, goals, and values workbook where the only exercise listed is clean your space. And I just really loved it because when we met, like my desk is still kind of messy right now, but when we met, like there really wasn't room for everything. Like all my thread was like piled up somewhere, like under all these notebooks or whatever. Like there's only room for my desktop or for my laptop, I mean. And then I just like embroider on top of my laptop. It was just like very uncomfortable. And then with the cleaning up, with the encouragement to clean up, I realized, oh, I'm not stuck. I can fix this. Like I can find like a cheap bookshelf and like move a lot of the stuff that's on the desk onto the bookshelf, and then I'll actually have space for things. And so it was just motivation to realize that in all aspects of life, no one's ever stuck, or usually no one's ever stuck. Of course, there are times where that might happen, but even small changes will make a big difference. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. So you kind of felt like once you started to clean up your space, you felt like, what did you feel? Like, what would you say is the biggest thing you felt?
I think I felt happy. I realized that I could have space that works for me in a New York City apartment. That's not always possible. But then you just have to get smart about storage solutions and not just like leave stuff piling up. You can make the time for yourself to clean up your space. You can make the time for yourself to exercise. You can make your time for yourself to, work on your small business.
That's awesome.
But just like this one little step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little step.
It's
a
surprising how
giant
necessary it is.
It is. Like, okay, so I recently just did you tell that my wall is blue? I don't know if you know
Yes.
I have to do the trim, but then I'll be finished in my room. Like, it feels so good. Like, I just want to be in here because I like it, right? And that's the whole point, like the whole thing. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that you haven't quite officially launched your business, rebranded business yet, but what kind of results do you think you'll see implementing the new thinking and the strategies that I've kind of been working with you on? Like, tell me what you're thinking.
So I think what I will see is a steady stream of sales. Obviously, it's too early to quote any numbers, but I think being able to test drive a product with someone, or you advising me about what would be good. Like, we know that embroidery kits sell on Etsy, but then the question is, what kind of kit stands out from the crowd? And so working together, I think we've made a kit that will be visually unique and interesting and has a compelling story.
Yeah. So you feel confident in that. And
yeah, definitely.
Awesome. That makes
and
happy.
yeah, and then with the visual branding, I can redesign the website. I could put up a store, so then I'm not relying on sales from Etsy as much, and hopefully the business will grow that way too.
Yeah, awesome. So I'd like to say this, but has this changed the way that you see your business going forward? Like,
oh yeah, definitely, because I have a direction, I have a framework. Part of the training with you was also to write a manifesto. So knowing that I have sitting down, deciding what life goals are for now. I mean, they could always change, but for now, like, what is reasonable to expect within the next year or two, and what I would want to work towards in the next 10 years. Like, that really helps. That's because awesome. Then that makes the business seem more real. There's a reason behind doing it. And yeah, and there's a focus that I definitely didn't have before meeting you, because I was just like, I'll sell embroidery kit, embroidery patterns, and then that'll be like printing money because it's just downloads, and then I could move on to other things. And obviously that wasn't working, because yeah, you need a story, and you need to focus, and it's good to have a third party who isn't a family member or a friend to listen to you and help you with that story, to make sure that it makes sense and that what you want to do is achievable.
I hope I'm your friend now. I hope you consider.
Yeah, of course. Definitely.
Yeah, but you're
definitely.
right.
But we still haven't met in person yet, so
yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. You don't want someone who's like too close to you at the start.
Yeah, I actually just had a call the other day with somebody who said that they're like, it's nice to like be able to be completely open and transparent with somebody and tell them like, I don't like that. When it's a family member or a friend, you're like kind of like tiptoeing that. And I do like that I'm transparent, so I hope my customers, my clients be transparent. So that's awesome to hear that, actually. So cool. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it, and it's so encouraging for me to hear all the things you said. I think the one thing that stands out to me is that you really like the manifesto, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was such a big. I like it myself because when I have a day when I'm just like, oh, and I feel blah, and I don't feel motivated, right?
Yeah.
It like
Yeah.
encourages you and it sets you back on track and you're like,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't read it every day or every week, which I know you're supposed to, but I think it's good to have it in the back of my mind. So, yeah, like having that helps me set a schedule for myself. So I spent last week writing down just like a rough outline of what things need to get done by what time this year, next year. And so then that helps me plan because now I know have like a general timeline
yeah,
of what needs to be done. And without that, on my days off from my part-time job, just sitting there like, oh, what should I do first? But having these goals and then working backwards to make a plan,
yeah,
that gives you structure and it takes away decision paralysis.
that's
So
awesome. I love
yeah,
that. That
yeah,
is great for me. I want to hear that. If I can hear that, every client I ever work with escape from paralysis. Like that's amazing, actually. I love that. I need to use that. I
yeah,
want to use that in my copywriting.
yeah. I heard that term recently. It's like, oh yes, that's such a good term, decision paralysis. It's very
Yeah,
true
I like it.
because yeah, especially if you want to be your own boss, you're the one in charge of your own schedule and the day is wide open and there are 50 million little projects that you could be doing at any given time that would all be good for your business. So you need to figure out
Which one actually
needs to be done right now.
Yeah. So which one do you feel like is the one thing that you need to be doing every day?
Every day. That I haven't decided yet because I think it'll really depend on what stage the business is in. Right now, definitely prepping kits, designs for kits. We already did a few together. But I think one of the reasons I've been having trouble figuring out which ones I even want to debut with are there isn't a story behind them yet. And as a fashion designer, my training is to tell a story through my design. So I want to make sure that there is some sort of unifying link. And once I find that and I'm able to create a mood board or whatever, I think then it'll be very fast for me. So I have 2 patterns on Etsy that are selling right now. And I'm sure they'll sell more if a kit is involved. So that'll just be, so I guess those 2 will just be the starting point. And I might just revamp them a little bit so they're now in my new style. And they're not quite as generic looking. And yeah, so that'll be a good starting point.
Yeah.
Right now, I feel like I should be dividing my time between kit design and then website creation, like creating the foundation for a good website. But that we need to wait a little bit because we still aren't totally done with visual branding. But I think having those 2 projects run concurrently makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for this. I'm going to turn it off now because not everybody wants to hear the rest of it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Heather. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And I know we'll be talking much more after this video.
Yes.
Yeah.